Hosea brought back his wife. The last devotion that we had was entitled Unfaithful Children, and we learned there that Hosea had informed Israel that in the future things would get really messed up and there would be a lot of violence and death, and that happened. But later, God would redeem Israel in the same way that he had blessed Israel. In Hosea 2:14 through 15, it talks about this, of how God blessed the Israelites in the same way that God redeemed the Israelites out of slavery in Egypt, in the same way he blessed them. At that time when the Israelites were free from Egyptian slavery, they served the Lord with gladness. And they had the blessings of the Lord, even though sometimes they rebelled against him. After the Israelites left Egyptian slavery at that time, God showed them his covenant and that they must obey him faithfully. Comparing the time that the Israelites left Egyptian slavery and followed Moses when they were wandering at that time towards Canaan to the time of Hosea's time, it was much worse. They were worshiping idols widely. It was a huge difference. The Israelites, when they were following Moses and they were nearing the promised land of Canaan, slow but steady progress. And then to the time of Hosea, when the Israelites very quickly went into paganism and they were worshiping idols very quickly. Hosea, he understood that in the future the Lord would redeem Israel to himself and he would save them from the wild animals and other enemies. The Israelites, oh, they were permeated deeply into idolatry, rebelling against God. It was a terrible thing. But in the future, the Israelites would be faithful to their husband Yahweh, and he would love them. The people would worship God himself, the covenant Lord of Israel, the one true God, the only covenant God, the only God of heaven. Hosea, he would take his wife, Gomer. She was a prostitute, and he would take her from her lover. And God's plan was to redeem Israel and to love Israel and take Israel back out of slavery from worshiping its false gods, its false worship. And there's a verse here that's a symbol. It's a symbol of the Israelites' worship to false gods. And what is this symbol? Well, it's cakes of raisins that were offered to false gods. Well, Hosea, he took back his wife Gomer, He took her back again, yes, but what did he do? Well, he did not enjoy the benefits of marriage with her, of enjoying a sexual relationship with her. There was nothing, none of this for several days. Now, Hosea, his wife, Gomer, the marital relationship, they weren't together sexually. And what did this point to? Well, it pointed to the relationship between God and Israel, that God would exile the Israelites to Assyria. He would be distant from them. The Israelites would be stuck with no enjoyment of sacrifices to their Lord, of going to the temple, of worshiping their God. Nothing. It was the same as Gomer with Hosea. No enjoyment in their relationship. When the Israelites, when they were exiled into Assyria, they had a very difficult time. It was a terrible time, but it would not be a permanent time. Now let's apply this to our Christian life. Matthew Henry, he was a preacher from a long time ago, and he said, "All who are sincerely devoted to God are betrothed to Him. God will love them, protect them, and provide for them. And the covenant itself shall be inviolable. God will not break it on His part, and you shall not on yours. And the blessings of it shall be everlasting." Everlasting. The Lord's promise, what is it? Well, He promised that the faithful remnant, that He would love them. They have loved Him, and they will have a future with Him forever in heaven. Sometimes things can seem dark and distressing for us. And we need to remember that God is always the God of His people. He is always God Himself to us, and He will always accomplish His purposes. Recently I was watching a television show about history. It was about the Civil War here in America, and there were some African American men who were serving in the Civil War. And the reason they were doing this is because they wanted their wives and their children, their families, to be free from slavery. They wanted to encourage their families. They wrote home to them saying, "Finally, you will be free from slavery." Almost 40,000 of these men died during the Civil War, never seeing their families free from slavery. We as Christians, we have a sure hope. We have a sure hope in the future with the Lord, eternally free from sin. We know that the promises that the Lord gave to Israel through Hosea are true. God has fulfilled His promises, and we have proof of this salvation from our sins. The proof is the cross. Jesus willingly sacrificed His life, and then He rose again from the dead. And now people all over the world will hear the gospel and be free from the slavery of sin. Now God is grabbing up people and saving them for the promised land of heaven. You'll notice that there are churches that are dwindling. And there's hypocrisy in the church. And that's distressing to us. But it's important that we remain faithful, the same as the remnant of Israel in Hosea's time remained faithful. Even though they saw other Israelites worshiping false gods, still they remained faithful. They saw violence and killings and things. But our charge is that God is not finished with us. We are His, and we are to remain faithful to Him. Corn deal.